we need to raise our voices. So one of the variation of one of the chants that was popularised by the encampments on universities was 1, we are the people. 2, we won't be silent. 3, stop the bombing now, 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 now. 1, we are the people. 2, we won't be silent. 3, stop the bombing now, 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 now. 1, we are the people. 2, we won't be silent. 3, stop the bombing now, 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 now. 1, we are the people. 2, we won't be silent. 3, stop the bombing now, 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 now. Sorry, drummers, I've got a lousy sense of rhythm. And I would like to recognise we're standing on the land that was stolen as a result of a genocide, the land of the Wurundjeri. And I'd like to pay my tribute to all the First Nations freedom fighters, some of whose names we'll never know, but who played a massive role to fight for their land. And it is stunning to think that today is 11 months of the current genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. 11 months. That is stunning that a country can get away with 11 months of bombing, starvation, extrajudicial killings, and all your terrorism without a single sanction from the Western rich nations. That is shameful to the max. And that's the only reason why Israel can get away with this, as we all know here. And it is something in our conversations with people who say, why are you protesting? It makes no difference. We need to say to friends and neighbours that if Australia carried out sanctions against Israel and encouraged other countries to take out sanctions against Israel, Israel would be forced to stop their bombing. So, Peter Halil wants us to stop protesting outside his office because he says he and the government support a ceasefire. That's right, that was going to be my next answer. No, what are they doing to get a ceasefire? Zero, nothing, not a zip. There's not a single sanction on Israel from Australia. And then Peter Halil goes on with some other arguments to disparage our movement. Now, one thing which Mohammed Helmi, that was a great quote that you read out, which shows what Peter Halil really thinks. He's trying to make people question what they're seeing by trying to say this is all manipulated. But actually, what we know, the people who are doing the manipulation is the Zionists and Israel. But, that's right. But the other way that Halil is trying to disparage us is by saying, oh, all these people came out of nowhere. Where were they? Where were they on other conflicts? Yes, there is an occupation. Yes, that's an injustice. There's no doubt about that. But they overlay it with every simplistic, almost neo-Marxist element of neo-white settlers. But where are the photos of the Rohingya he posts? I was there in Myanmar. I saw the concentration camps. I'm not saying it's a relevant situation about suffering. You can't compare human suffering. But social media only feeds people the suffering of Palestinians. You don't see the Sudanese kids who were bombed in their school last week. Now, that's Peter Halil. I don't support that, obviously. Where is Halil on giving Rohingya refugees permanent visas in Australia? What is he doing that's in his power as a member of the Australian government to support the rights of refugees, of Rohingyan refugees who've also fled a very similar situation to people in Gaza? Yes, people's houses were burnt down with Rohingyans inside those houses that were burnt down. the majority of the Rohingyas were forced outside of Burma. Australia has barely lifted a finger about the situation in Burma, but also Australia's policy of not accepting refugees who come by boat has directly impacted the Rohingyan refugees who have not been allowed to come to Australia. So shame on Halil. He does not support the Rohingya. Our movement has given a platform to lots of struggles of people who've been victims of genocides and victims of colonisation in lots of different countries. Then he asks about Sudan. Well, the last I heard from one of the Sudanese activists is Australia has still not called for a ceasefire in Sudan. Where have we heard that one before? And they've given very little support to Sudanese Australian civilians in Sudan who were trying to leave. And given very little support, if any, to people in Sudan who are trying to flee. So I call out Peter Halil's comments as bullshit. There's a reason why we're protesting against genocide, because it's still going. And it's within Australia's power to help stop it. That's right, we are absolutely complicit. Israel and its Western backers, including Australia, want us to go away. The US wants Palestinians to go away and just accept whatever fate Israel wants to give out to them. Now, we know the real reason is because US wants unfettered control of the Middle East with compliant Arab regimes and the Israeli military force. But we also know our movement is having an impact, even though it might feel like it's not at various times. The Israeli army, while they're destroying everything in Gaza, and we know they're purposely targeting humanitarian aid workers, doctors, nurses, paramedics, but also people trying to repair the water supplies and other sorts of infrastructure. They're specifically, deliberately targeting all of the people in Gaza who are trying to repair the damage that the Israeli regime is carrying out. But at the same time it's doing that, our worldwide movement for Palestine has resulted in a new emergency clinic in Al-Shifa Hospital being re-established. It's resulted in international teams of doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers working with Palestinians who've never conducted certain surgeries before, guiding them through the process. So the international movement is doing its bit in every way, shape or form to help the Palestinians in Gaza. And so our movement of resistance is absolutely critical. Now, the ALP in Australia wants our movement to go away. They want us to stop protesting. Well, the reason they want us to stop protesting is because people like Halil and others can't get away with saying, well, initially they wouldn't even utter the word ceasefire. Now they utter the word ceasefire, but they're not doing anything to get a ceasefire. So they don't want to be reminded of that. And if our movement didn't exist, a lot of people would get sucked in when Peter Halil says, oh, I support a ceasefire, it's very sad. Well, our movement has educated people to say, that's not enough. That's bullshit. They're not doing anything to try and get a ceasefire. We actually want politicians who actually take action to get a ceasefire to end the siege, end the genocide. That's what we want. That's why they want to get rid of our movement. They want us to stop looking behind their lies and their lying words to what is really happening, what's really within their power to do that they're refusing to do. So when it comes to council elections, I'm standing in the council elections for Merri-bek. I am standing in the northernmost ward, which covers Fawkner and part of North Coburg. So my motion at the moment that I moved last year and then a second motion, follow-up motion in March, has locked the Merri-bek Council into supporting the boycott, divestment and sanctions campaign. So that means they've ended contracts with 4 companies that supported the Israeli military and the genocide in Gaza. And they're not going to buy or go into contracts with companies on the BDS list in the future. That's part of the procurement process. But if we elect the wrong people in the council elections, they could overturn that. They could bring a new motion to council to say, let's get rid of those changes that I got to the procurement process. Let's get rid of the BDS campaign from council's procurement process. Let's back Israel. So that's what could happen if we elect the wrong people in the council elections. And that doesn't just go for Merri-bek, that goes for other councils where they're pro-Palestine candidates standing. So none of these things, any progressive reform you win under capitalism, the right wing is immediately trying to work to undermine that progressive reform. It doesn't necessarily stay forever. So we have to keep fighting for any progressive reform. And a progressive reform is ending trade with companies that back the Israeli military and the genocide. So in Fawkner, there's a bit of a pitched battle of words going on. The ALP standing a Muslim candidate who works for State Labor MP Kathleen Matthews Ward. So there is a big argument happening within the chat groups of the largest mosque in Fawkner. And I'm sure that what the Labor Party is doing, they're holding funding over the top of sports groups and various migrant groups, etc. But also they're coming up with all sorts of slander. Socialist Alliance was slandered by the Pascoe Vale Labor MP in Parliament House for passing the Palestine motion, for passing these motions and not focusing on roads, rates and rubbish. And that's what Hassan Gul, the Labor candidate in Fawkner, is trying to appeal to the racists while telling the Muslim community something different. And the way he's trying to appeal is by saying we have to just focus on local issues and not other issues, i.e. Palestine. But councils do all sorts of things. They, yes, have to do roads, rates and rubbish, but they supply all sorts of things from maternal and child health to parks to all sorts of things. But also councils have always responded on human rights issues. Human rights is council business. And we have some members of the Merri-bek community who've lost over 100 members of their family in Gaza. We've got Gazan refugees in the Merri-bek community. This issue affects people in Merri-bek, and other people in Merri-bek have been seeing what's happening in Gaza, and this is causing anxiety, mental distress, all sorts of things for so many people, especially other people, all sorts of people who fled wars and genocide. So Palestine is council business. So I'd like to urge everyone to support any pro-Palestine candidate, and actually we've heard from Mohammed Helmi, we'll hear from some other candidates shortly, but I'd like to introduce another pro-Palestine activist who's standing in the Whittlesea area, Halima Mcleishish, who is standing in the ward of Thomastown. So anyone who lives in Whittlesea or has friends in Whittlesea, come and talk to Halima afterwards. She is also part of Teachers for Palestine and has been involved in all of the actions for Palestine. Thanks, Halima. So let's support pro-Palestine candidates. The ALP in Merri-bek has voted against all of the Palestine motions. So I suspect that the ALP candidate in Faulkner will vote along party lines if he is elected. So the fact that he's a Muslim doesn't mean he won't vote against Palestine motions if he gets elected. And ditto for all of the other Labor candidates, regardless of their ethnic or religious or otherwise background. So thank you. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Albo, Albo, you can't hide. Peter, Khalil, you can't hide.